Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste on KICI 105.3 FM in Iowa City. And if you happen to be watching this on the Fairfield Media Channel's YouTube channel, great. We'll welcome you no matter how you are either viewing or listening to this. I am talking with, you are either hearing or watching, Danielle Renov. She is in Jerusalem. Hi.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Steve, for having me.
So happy to have you on. Danielle is the author of, well, it's her brand new book, Peas, Love, and Carrots, the cookbook. Yep, there. It is a very heavy book, by the way.
It is. It is not easy to do that one-handed.
And she's also, her website is peasloveandcarrots.com. You can find her on Instagram, where she is a major influencer, at peasloven, the letter N, carrots. That's her Instagram handle. And we'll be glad to talk about all kinds of different parts of your, we'll say, food personality as we go along here. But I want to make sure that everybody understands that you are originally from New York, but your mother is Moroccan, correct?
Yes.
And your father is New York, Brooklyn, Bronx, or Brooklyn born and bred?
You know, I think he was born in the Bronx.
Uh-huh.
But Long Island bred.
Long Island. Okay, fine. That's okay.
Yeah.
And so he's totally, we're talking about someone who is from the Ashkenazic genetic end of Judaism for your dad.
Very, very much so.
And I can relate to that because my genetics are probably about 98% Ashkenazic.
Well, Steve, I'm going to tell you what my mother said. Ashkenazi Jews are like water. Sephardic Jews are like wine. If you take one drop of water and put it in a glass of wine, nothing's going to happen. You take one drop of wine and put it in a glass of water, the whole thing turns pink. So all you need is 2%. That's it. That's all you need.
Well, I got to tell you something, Danielle, because it's kind of interesting you said that. I would have to say that in my exploration of Judaism throughout my life, I have always been much more interested in the Sephardic traditions because I find them much richer. And
2%.
2%, right? Exactly. And by the way, their food is a heck of a lot better than the Ashkenazi food in general. You can't see her. You can't see her if you're listening to this on the radio, but she's got, let's put it this way. She agrees.
No. I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining. Oh.
I'm abstaining from comment because I do love my father, and he is Ashkenazic, and his mother did make some excellent food. It's just that all the Sephardic food is good, and like some of the Ashkenazic food is good.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's fair. I honestly, I do. I think that's fair. And
I just think also the Ashkenazic food consists of like 8 things that are just repurposed in different ways. And like, it's mostly just potatoes, chicken, salt, and pepper. Like the salt is even if you're lucky, you know, but Sephardic food has a much richer ingredient list.
Yes.
So it produces much bolder and varied flavors.
Yes.
So if you're a flavor seeker, you know, like really I am, like the type that loves acids and vinegars and even like not exclusive to Sephardic cuisine, but like different types of cuisines from all over the world and spice-driven foods, then of course you're going to feel connected to Sephardic food because it is the more flavorful one objectively.
Right. And the truth is that when you celebrate Passover, if you use an Ashkenazic table, we'll say, it's so much more, I would call it boring compared to what the Sephardic table has to offer. But that's probably time for another discussion. We have to talk about your book.
That's true.
All right?
Okay.
Because so I want everybody to understand something. This is another basic principle that we've got to, tackle here at the beginning. And that is that Danielle does not lack passion. That is
No.
something that we can get right away. And she is a very joyful person. That's another thing that comes through. And it comes through, by the way, right from the beginning in that book. You know, it's so clear that the passion and the joy jump off the page. And that is something that I was really attracted to. And I would really appreciate it if you would read the last two paragraphs of the introduction.
Oh,
because
I would love to.
yes, I think that will give people a better understanding of who you are and the perspective that you brought to this book.
Okay. Since the beginning of Peas Loving Carrots, I have been open with my community about who I am, where I come from, and what I stand for. In return, I have been humbled by the way you have opened your homes and hearts to me. We have formed relationships through which I have grown and been inspired time and time again. Peppered throughout the book are anecdotes, little stories, notes, tips, and tricks. Those little bits of my mind weaving their way in and out of the pages of the book are me continuing to connect to you and the creation of this book and extending our conversation from the virtual space they exist in onto the pages of this book. They are a way for me to acknowledge that the creation of this book is a means for me to glorify God who has bestowed this platform upon me and to give thanks for this kind, strong, beautiful, and powerful community we've created on and off Instagram. It is in the kitchen, preparing food for my family, that I express my love for Hashem, God, providing the nourishment and sustenance they need to enable their own personal journeys of learning and growth that will then enable them to illuminate his presence in this world through Torah and mitzvot is how I serve him. My hope is that my words and recipes here bring us together around the table and open the lines of communication with our friends and family, that they can elicit and facilitate the kind of dialogue and discourse that help form the deepest and most meaningful relationships we have in this world, the kinds of bonds that inspire us to grow and be better people every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So will you tell us a little bit about your journey from New York to Israel and why you are informed the way you are in the kitchen, how your life informs that?
I grew up in Long Island. My parents are modern Orthodox Jews, and my father was born and raised in New York as a conservative Jew, actually. My mother was born in Morocco and raised in Paris. And her family, I guess you could call them conservative, but for Sephardic Jews, it really doesn't translate the same way. I would say she was more traditional than conservative. And for Sephardic Jews, tradition really looks like a very deep connection to customs and to rituals that were passed down from parent to child. Not always with a huge emphasis on keeping the letter of the law, but with a very deep connection to God and bringing God into their everyday interactions. And my parents got married and became a little bit more observant on their own and became modern Orthodox. And I grew up in Long Island. I went to a modern Orthodox day school, Jewish day school, where, you know, boys and girls had mixed classes. And I dressed like any other American. And our home was strictly kosher. And we did keep the Sabbath and light candles Friday night. And we didn't, you know, drive or engage in any electronics or technology over the Sabbath. But, you know, we did have a summer home in Fire Island, and we would, you know, although our home was strictly kosher, we would go out to eat in restaurants, you know, refraining from, you know, treats like pork or shellfish, but eating vegetables and fish and dairy in any restaurant we went to. After high school, I went to Israel for a gap year program. And I think because I had this deep spiritual foundation from my mother, I really connected a lot to what I was learning. And I grew very deeply in relation to my connection to God and the Torah and the commandments and the laws, and very slowly became more and more observant. Now I live an ultra-Orthodox life in Jerusalem. We're not Hasidic. We're not part of any Hasidic community, just ultra-Orthodox. Obviously, I do cover my hair. I try to cover, you know, my body appropriately in accordance to the level of customs that we feel comfortable keeping. And I think that because I grew up in a home where, you know, I grew up in Long Island, where it wasn't so common to have an immigrant parent necessarily. Immigrant grandparents were very common because most of us had grandparents that were survivors of the Holocaust. So most of us didn't actually have any American grandparents. In fact, my husband is one of the first people I ever met to have 4 American grandparents. That was really a novelty to me. I didn't know that that was a thing. I didn't even have 2 American parents, so that was really foreign. And basically, I think that because I grew up with a mother that was different from most of the mothers around me, and I grew up with 2 parents that were different from each other, yet were so loving and had such a wonderful relationship. And my mother was so respectful of my father's family, and my father was so respectful of my mother's family, and each respected their customs. And really, when we came to the table together, which is really when everybody comes together, you know, if your grandparents are coming, your cousins are coming, you're coming together around a dinner party, around a barbecue, around a cocktail party, around a holiday dinner. I saw the respect that they had for each other. And I think it really imbued in me a sense of respect for everyone. You know, it doesn't matter who you look like or where you come from or, you know, what color you are or what religion you are or what your level of observance is. All that matters is that we're sitting here together at this table, and that's enough common ground for us to respect each other and love each other and treat each other with kindness. And I guess for me, because all of these events happened around the table and around food, food really holds that power for me. And it's a reminder of that fact for me, and it's a neutralizer. And I think that's one of the main reasons I love food, is not just because, you know, I love to eat, which I do, and I love to cook, which I do, but I also love what food accomplishes. And that's absolutely imbued with my food. You know, my recipes are big recipes. They're not small. They're meant for you to gather around the table with loved ones, with friends. They're meant for you to make it and freeze half so that if you ever have an emergency guest, you have food to serve them. They're meant to bring you to the table because I do believe that's when the best conversation happens with your children, with your loved ones. You know, it sort of breaks the ice and puts us in this less combative state. And even hot topics like politics or religion discussed over a good meal can be discussed with a mutual respect and understanding of one another. And that's really when the most growth can happen, is when maybe I don't agree with your opinions, but I'm learning from them. And I love that about this book, and I love that about food in general, and that's really my goal.
I want to just ask a follow-up question before we get into the book, because all the things that you said really pertain directly to the type of society that you live in, because you live in a society that's made up of so many different peoples, so many, several different religions, and has had, we'll say, a reputation for conflict for a long period of time. And yet one of the elements that I see as hope is food. And in more recent years, the actual, we'll say, more attention to the richness of the cuisine of the area, whether it's cuisine that comes from, you know, Sephardic Jews who moved there, whether from the States or from Spain or from Morocco or France or whatever, or it comes from Palestinian people who are living there and their traditions and their, or Christians. And I wonder, I'd just love to hear your perspective on that.
I think you're absolutely right. You know, I do live in a melting pot of cultures and religions and people, and that's actually part of the reason why I love it here. Not everybody gets along all the time, and of course, for, you know, somebody that really hopes and prays for peace and lives in a way that I think can bring peace. It's very sad to see conflict. But the reality is that I've never seen more conflict here than I've seen in America or anywhere else. Unfortunately, it's just highlighted here more for some reason. But, you know, I think this is a sad reality, but there's hate everywhere. And, you know, that's just not what I like to focus on. The the same way there's hate everywhere, there's love and respect everywhere. And that's what I look for. And I know many Christians that live here, and many Palestinians, and many Hasidic Jews, and many secular Jews, and many ultra-Orthodox Jews, and many modern Orthodox Jews that all live here and that all just want to live and respect the person they're standing next to in the supermarket. And it's very sad because most of the hate comes from extremists, not extremely religious, just people with extreme anything. And like, they take over, and they take over the media, and they take over the world. And it's just, it doesn't reflect what the average person wants. I don't think, because it doesn't, I mean, maybe, I don't know. I can only speak for myself. It doesn't reflect what I want. I just want everybody to live in peace and be happy and learn from one another and grow together. And, you know, our world is, we all have something to offer. And how much better can our world be if we stop fighting and listen to each other and love each other? And I really focus on that. And I live here in Jerusalem, and I see the beauty. And I walk around the old city, and I see the beauty. I see the delicious foods that the Palestinians bring to the table, and the delicious foods that the Turkish Jews and the Iraqi Jews and the Syrian Jews and the Moroccan Jews bring to the table, and the delicious food that the Hungarian Jews and the Eastern European Jews, and the wonderful food that the Bedouins bring, and, you know, the Egyptian, and it's just, it's amazing. And what's happened in Israel, actually, despite all the conflict, is that Israel has created this cuisine called Israeli cuisine. And I use quotes. I mean, you can't see me. If you can't see me, you don't see that I'm using quotes when I say Israeli cuisine, but I am, because Israeli cuisine is a modern invention. You know, Israeli cuisine is really just, you know, a word for melting pot of cultures that, you know, come together in the Middle East. And it's actually, I love the word Israeli cuisine because it connotes peace. We all had to come together to make up this cuisine, and it's delicious. And I'm so happy the world is loving Israeli cuisine right now, because it's a mixture of what we all did together, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's jump into this book. You can for those people who are watching, you can show the book again. I'm giving you a
never
workout.
Too many times.
Right, Peas, Love, and Carrots. Peas, Love, and Carrots, the cookbook. And so one of the parts, which is right near the beginning, that I fell in love with was 86 things I want you to know about the book and cooking in general. But actually, before that, I forgot to mention this. There's a page on how to follow a recipe. I got such a kick out of that, and maybe you could just summarize that, because it's like, so I think for a lot of people, it's like, I'm not going to do that, or
So, you know what, I think a lot of because I really worked with my community on Instagram, which is really like my home base, to create this book and to give people a book that they actually wanted to buy and make room for on their shelves, I saw that there were so many novice cooks, whether they were, you know, teenagers or singles or newlyweds or elderly people that just never had to cook before, that really didn't really understand the basic rules to following a recipe. And you know, there's not really very many rules in cooking. It's not like baking, you know, you have more liberty and more freedom. But there are a few basic things that I think as a recipe writer, we want you to understand, right? So, for example, read the recipe through from beginning to end before you start. If you want to make any changes, that's fine. Just make sure, you know, it's in line with the final outcome. So just give the recipe a read through. And then, you know, make sure you have all the ingredients that you want to use, because you don't want to be scrambling. And then I think this is the main thing that people really connected to, was that you really want to notice nuances in wording. When a recipe developer writes 1 cup of strawberries, chopped, versus 1 cup of chopped strawberries, she's actually telling you how to measure those ingredients. One way you measure the strawberries whole, one way you measure them chopped, and you'll actually have to use a different amount of strawberries. So those are things you really want to focus on and pay attention to, because that will actually affect the final outcome of your dish. You know, and then of course, preparing yourself and mise en place and getting to know your kitchen and your oven and your equipment and things like that. And then I love, my final tip is really the best: cut yourself some slack. You know, if you're new to cooking, you have to go easy on yourself. It's a skill like any other, and practice makes perfect. And there is no person in this whole world that cooks for themselves that has 100% perfect cooking record. It doesn't exist. everybody has burned something. Everybody that has left out salt or left out sugar or forgotten something in the freezer or overdone it or underdone it or curdled the milk or burnt the sauce. It's just the reality, you know? It's how it works, so don't fret.
Right. And the best place to be in when you're cooking is that place of joy. So that's a great tip. And so let's go into some of these 86 things, because this, as I said, this is like it's probably my favorite part of the whole book. It's funny. It's a cookbook, but this is like my favorite part because it's like you coming out, right? Really right there. So, all right, number one, if you just read what these are and then brief comment on it.
Okay, number one, you should know was not written during, the COVID outbreak. It was written pre-COVID, although it's more apropos now than ever. Number one, before you start cooking, wash your hands. Thank you in advance. If I'm eating your food, I want your hands to be clean. Basic.
Beautiful. Number four.
Number four. Oh, okay, this one has caused some controversy, but I stand behind it. Peel your celery. No one likes to chew strings that get stuck in their mouth or their throat or their teeth. And I'll tell you what, I got so many messages. The strings have fiber. It's the most nutritious part of the celery. I don't care, because I'm not going to eat the celery if the strings are there. So the nutrition is irrelevant. But those fibers never, ever, ever break down. They never break down no matter how long you cook the celery for, and they are unpleasant to eat. Get rid of them.
And I'll just add one thing. And if you want to leave them on, go ahead, be my guest, right?
No, I don't agree with you. I don't.
well, I agree with you completely. I mean, and it was my father who actually taught me that about celery. So I remember that very clearly. Okay, number 9.
Number 9. Okay, arugula is extremely underrated. So are endives and radicchio, and they are. I don't understand why. They're first of all, as in terms of like leaves, let's say, or salad builders or whatever you want to call them, they have so much flavor, so much more flavor than lettuce, in fact, and they're crunchy and they're delicious. And I mean, I personally think that bitter is a flavor profile that is very, very overlooked. Like things like radicchio and broccoli rabe are like all the right kinds of bitter that when used properly, you're like, oh, wait, bitter is good. We just have this like weird association where bitter is not good, but it in fact really is good. So I would say they are underrated and definitely give them a try.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I agree with you. So good, right? Okay. Number 10.
Okay, wait, hold on. I'm just relocating.
You're doing such a great job. I just love how flexible you are in terms of like making this work. It's like, it's so much fun. I think everybody who's listening isn't going to get, the exact, feel for it the same way as those people who are watching or seeing you move from one location to another, because you're in a shopping mall, right?
I'm in a shopping center outside of a supermarket. But I'm going to I would say more quiet zone, but it's where my children are. So it's going to be less quiet for me personally, but more quiet in terms of background noise.
Good. We'll enjoy it. So it's number 10.
Okay. Children are guaranteed to be more open to tasting new foods and dishes when they are in some way involved in how it ended up in front of them. And I firmly believe that. I mean, listen, it's wonderful to take your kids to the farm and pick carrots out of the field and pick your own vegetables, grow your own produce. That's a wonderful thing to do if you can. But even if you can't, simply bringing them to the supermarket with you and teaching them how you choose tomatoes, or letting them pick the produce or fruits and vegetables that they want, or the protein that they want, and then really bringing them into the kitchen. It doesn't have to be a disaster in the kitchen. You can give them a job, sit them down with a cucumber and a plastic knife, which actually does work, and say, do me a favor, cut the ends off the cucumbers. And then when those cucumbers are in the salad, they're going to be excited about that.
Right.
Look through a cookbook. Let them choose the recipes they want you to make. I just think that, like old people, we want to be invested. And when they are invested, they're more likely to taste it with an open mind. I don't think forcing children to eat food ever works. It only backfires.
Right. Number 16.
Table manners exist for a reason. Chew with your mouth closed, hold the fork and knife properly, and place your napkin on your lap. If this sounds foreign to you, Google table manners.
I think you better read the last sentence again. I don't think that you were laughing so hard. I don't think anybody knows what you wrote.
I'm remembering was my conversation with the publisher that really did not want that one in there, and I fought for it. If this sounds foreign to you, Google table manners.
That's great. I don't think we need to comment. I think it stands on its own.
Listen, what I will say is that table manners differ culturally from one place to another.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't all have to look how it looks in America, but wherever you are culturally, respect their table manners.
Yes.
Because, it's nice. It's nice to your fellow diners.
I'm glad you said that, because table manners are much different in different cultures, and there are a lot of cultures. I mean, I'm sure in some of the cultures there, people eat with their hands, don't they? A lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Israel has a huge Ethiopian community, and Ethiopians notoriously eat with their hands. I mean, they have the injera, they have like really, really big bread that they use, but it's completely different. And there's so many Sri Lankans and Filipinos here that use more chopsticks traditionally. And whatever a culture is, like that is the table manners you should go according to, obviously within your skill set. If you can't use chopsticks, okay, I'm sure people will be understanding of that.
Right.
But I think as a general rule, it's just kind to the person sitting next to you to eat in a nice manner and not, gross anyone out.
Completely understand. Number 22.
Oh, 22, we're jumping, okay. Food made with love tastes better, guaranteed. I stand by that.
Mm-hmm. 24.
You're picking all the controversial ones. Half a tablespoon is not a real measurement. Okay.
What?
Yeah, okay. This is how the measurements go. Sometimes there's an eighth of a teaspoon. I have thoughts on that also, but we'll let it go. There's a quarter teaspoon, half a teaspoon, teaspoon, tablespoon. 3 teaspoons equal a tablespoon. So what equals half a tablespoon? Well, 1.5 teaspoons. There's no spoon for that. If somebody's selling you a spoon for that, they're just trying to take your money. You don't need that spoon. You already have the half a teaspoon and you have the teaspoon. You don't need the 1.5 teaspoon. That's ridiculous.
25.
25. Oh, raisins are the unfulfilled potential of grapes. They could have been wine. Now they are ruining noodle kugel for children everywhere. It's exactly what it sounds like.
36.
Okay. Every oven is different. Learn yours. It's true. Most ovens are not calibrated exactly the same way. The best thing to do is to head on Amazon, type in oven thermometer. They sell these little ones that hang off the rack, and check your oven. Just because you turn the knob to 350 doesn't mean it's at 350. It might actually only be at 340. And then all this time you think you're cooking a cake at 350 degrees and you don't know why after 40 minutes the toothpick's not coming out clean, but now you know, because you're not in fact cooking it at 350 degrees.
57.
57. Okay. Scrambled eggs start off in a cold nonstick pan with a pat of butter and a pinch of salt and pepper. Use a rubber or silicone spatula to continuously stir the eggs as the pan is heating up. Hold the pan off the fire 30 seconds before they are finished cooking. They will finish cooking from the heat of the pan. I stand by that.
It's the French method. Maybe it starts even before then, but it's the best scrambled eggs, the best. And yeah.
It's just basic to me. Like I was even considering making it a recipe, but obviously I was limited on pages. So, at some point the publisher was like, okay, enough recipes, Danielle. 254 is more than enough. And I was like, okay, I don't need to give scrambled eggs their own page, but I need to let everybody know that there is a method.
Right. And so I've taught my 2 granddaughters how to do it that way. And now if we're in a hurry, they're kind of like, oh, I don't really want them done the other way, anymore. I want them done this way. And so depending upon how much of a hurry I might have to say, well, next time we'll do it the right way. But now we've just got to make scrambled eggs if you want them, right? Because it does take a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of time.
It does.
67.
Write the date on anything that goes in your freezer. This is something that I just think home cooks don't know. I mean, things have a shelf life even in the freezer, and you got to know when you put them in there.
77.
Oh. If you accidentally drop your cell phone on something you are cooking, say because you are trying to Instagram the process, throw it out and start again. Phones are not clean. Phones are not clean, actually. They are, in fact, very germ covered, and they should not be anywhere near food. And, you know, if you are Instagramming or taking a picture of your food and your phone drops in it, I do not consider that safe to eat any longer.
Number 80.
Do not attempt to cook or bake or do anything at all for that matter with hungry children. That's a life lesson. You're welcome.
I honestly would expand that. Don't even attempt to do it with hungry adults in the room. Even yourself, you know, get yourself something to eat so you can, you know, enjoy the process.
That's true. I'm going to add that amendment. That's
okay.
True.
Last one, 86.
I'm very proud of this one. This is a banana, raisin, and marinara free book, just so you know.
Okay, so now I totally get the raisins and the banana, but the marinara I'm not sure about. So I want to know.
I hate it. Marinara is disgusting. I'm sorry, it's not okay. I don't want chunks of carrot or weird dried herbs or chunks of onion in my tomato sauce. I am building the dish. I'm making the dish. I will add what I want to add. If I want onions, I will add onions. If I want carrots, I'll add carrots. If I want herbs, I'll add herbs. If I want spice, I'll add spices. Just give me the tomatoes. Give me the tomatoes. I will do the rest. Thank you.
And there you have it. so that was fun. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for playing along. I appreciated that.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
So you know, maybe we'll have time to do this again in sometime in the near future, because you're indulging me, and we're running out of time to cover the whole rest of the book. So let me just say that what really attracted me were so many of what I would consider to be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the Moroccan influenced recipes, and the type of eating, which I only know the only word I know is more of a Middle Eastern word, which is metse, which I always include in that definition, whether it's right or not, you know, dips and dressings and little small plates full of all kinds of interesting things. So this is a major part of the book, and I loved it. And I wonder if there's just something that stands out in that particular area that you want to share with people.
So it's true. In Sephardic culture, we do a lot of dips and small salads. You know, instead of serving a big green salad, even though there's a lot of that in the book, I, of course, wanted to include my Moroccan culture and heritage. And a lot of the salads are really centered around one vegetable: a carrot salad, a kohlrabi salad, a cucumber salad, things like that. And I wanted to give that to you because they're delicious and they're so, you know, wonderful. And we obviously start off our Sabbath and holiday meals with a really big challah on the table. And what better to eat with your challah than delicious salads and dips? And of course, a big part of that is the spicy dips, and that's really my favorite page because I am Moroccan. Moroccans do like their food on the spicier side, and my favorite recipe is actually the salad cuit. Salad cuit is like a Moroccan tomato and pepper dip. It's only 5 ingredients: tomatoes, garlic, peppers, jalapenos, and a little paprika. That's it. But it's really the method in which you cook them. You know, you cook the tomatoes and the garlic for 6 to 8 hours, and then you roast the peppers and peel them and really give them the respect and love they deserve. And then, you know, once the tomatoes are cooked down, you add the peppers and the paprika and you let it cook again. And it's just this most wonderful, delicious, layered, spicy dip. And it's actually, speaking of eggs, one of my favorite ways to eat it is with eggs. It's very traditional for Moroccans to include it in their omelets or, you know, frittata type of dish. Or we have a recipe for a shalashut Seudat Shlishit challah. It's a traditional, the third meal of Sabbath. We take a portion of dough and we add, you know, tuna and oil and salad cuit and sometimes hard-boiled eggs, and we wrap it up and bake it like that. And it's so delicious and so wonderful. And I just, I couldn't not include them because it's really actually my favorite part of the meal is all these dips and things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there was one soup that I just loved looking at the recipe for, red lentil soup. That was a great one.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So,
thank you so much. I love that. I love lentils. I think there's like 3 or 4 different types of lentil soup throughout the book.
yeah,
I'm a big lentil fan.
yeah, lentils are kind of a very forgiving type of legume, and they also just add so much flavor. You can make a nice soup with them. You can make a nice salad, using them in salad. I mean, there's so many good things that you can do with lentils. And my only advice about that is, if you can, try to buy really good lentils as opposed to ones that might have been sitting on a shelf for a year or two, that type of thing, because you'll get a lot more flavor out of them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I love to use different types of lentils because they all cook differently and they have different textures and bites to them. Mm-hmm. And they're wonderful lentils.
So everybody who writes a cookbook, not everybody, but most people who write cookbooks that aren't vegetarian or vegan cookbooks, that, for example, would have a chicken recipe, usually have a roast chicken recipe. And it's funny how everybody's roast chicken recipe is always the best roast chicken recipe. And I'm happy to say you have a best roast chicken recipe in your book too. So why?
It's true. I think most best roast chicken recipes are the same, which is why they're called the best roast chicken, because the best roast chicken is a simple roasted chicken. It's not one that needs to be brined, although a good brine chicken is really delicious, but it doesn't need a marinade. It doesn't need anything fancy. It just needs to be cooked well. The flesh needs to be juicy. The skin needs to be crispy, and that's it. And so I think all best roast chickens have that in common, is really the sheer simplicity to creating the dish and the flavor of the dish. And that's what best roast chicken means to me.
All right. Now, there are a few other dishes that really stood out to me. How many recipes are there altogether in this book?
There's over 254, actually. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It is, and it's a gorgeous book too. The photography is gorgeous. It's just really, and of course, I think people probably understand from listening to us, it's fun to read. There's there's little parts to it like tips and other areas that we're not even covering, but it's a very immersive experience, we'll say.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about some of these dishes that I think are very Moroccan in origin. Pastella, for example.
Pastella was just like a regular weeknight dinner that we grew up with. It's basically like kind of a Moroccan shepherd pie, a layer of potatoes, layer of meat, layer of potatoes. And it's just better because it's delicious and the spices are delicious and it's creamy and yummy and I love it.
So, and Moroccan stuffed artichokes?
Such a good one. Artichokes are delicious. Artichoke hearts are delicious. And, fill them with really good flavored ground beef, dredge them and fry them, and then cook them in this lemony, turmeric-y, braised broth. And we're talking good stuff, delicious.
Mm-hmm. And then to take something that's as common, we'll say, in everybody's refrigerator as a carrot, and create cumined carrots, for example.
Cumined carrots. Well, cumin obviously is a staple in Moroccan spices, in a Moroccan spice pantry. And carrots are also a staple in the Moroccan home because they were readily available throughout Morocco most of the year. And, cumin and carrots are both very, very earthy vegetables and pair so nicely together. And then you combine that with a little bit of lime zest to add some acidity and, you've got a winner.
So there are 2 parts to your 86 things. And by the way, did you choose that number 86 to stop at because of what it means in the restaurant business, or?
No.
That's
funny. You're actually the first person to pick up on that. That was a secondary thought when I got to 86, but really I had gotten to 88 and I was born in 1986 and I was like, 88 has no meaning. I can't use 88. So I went with 86 and then I was like, well, you know what? This is really perfect. We're going to 86 it right here. This is perfect.
It's done. So there were a couple of other ones I didn't mention, but I feel like we should discuss them, and you're kind of, you kind of led into them a little bit. So one is the spices that people need to be familiar with. I know you chose, I think 10, if you had to have them, that they would be in your, spice cabinet. And I think that this is what everyone who may not be familiar with Middle Eastern type food, I think if you give them a little basic understanding of the spices, they'll, that's why it's so flavorful.
Right. So I think the thing that's so wonderful about spices in general is that spices can really take you around the world right from the comfort of your kitchen, right? Like you have a simple piece of chicken breast and you add a few different spices to it and you're in Mexico. Then you add some different ones and you're in Morocco and some different ones and you're in Lebanon or maybe in China, or maybe in India. You can travel the world in your spice pantry. And I personally love that about spices. For Moroccans, spices are a huge, huge, huge part of the cuisine. It's really how they built flavor. Spices like saffron, turmeric, cinnamon, cardamom, paprika and oil are very, very common. Ginger in a Moroccan pantry. And, obviously like spice blends, more commonly known like Ras El Hanout and things like that, are a baharat. Are very prominent in a Moroccan pantry. And if you want to really, start with a cuisine like Moroccan food, you really do need to invest in some good spices.
And speaking of that, maybe give us a little bit of insight as to how to, in general, buy your spices.
So I'm very fortunate. I live near the Shuk in Jerusalem, which is the open air market, and I live near the most wonderful spice vendors in the world. So I don't buy my spices in bottles. I buy small baggies of my spices. I have a spice cabinet filled with jars that are all different sizes because, I've come to know how often I use my spices and how quickly I go through them. So, because I'm a little anal, I like to run out at the same time so that I can refill a lot of things at once. So, something like paprika and oil, which I use very frequently, is in a jar that's as big as my salt jar. But something, let's say, like, like cardamom is in a jar that's smaller because I don't use it as frequently as paprika. Now, the thing is that you really don't want your spices, I would say, sitting for more than 3 months, but that's generous. A month to 6 weeks is really where your shelf life is at. And then actually the flavor does start to deteriorate. And that's so sad because you're using the spices to add flavor. So you want the maximum flavor out of them. Of course, you can freeze your spices to extend that shelf life a little bit longer. But then, you are going to want to reheat them, maybe in a little bit of oil, toast them in a pan to really release their flavors and their oils again. So I would say you're better off really, when I see those big bottles of spices, I kind of just like, oh man, why? Yeah.
Is there a particular oil that you use more often than other oils in your cooking?
I really use olive oil and canola oil. Olive oil doesn't have a very high burning point. So for frying or things like that, or for olive oil actually can be a bit bitter, especially when it's processed or dealt with. So olive oil in a raw salad is wonderful and great. Actually, in fact, much better than something like a canola oil because it doesn't have that mouthfeel. But, if you're making mayonnaises or things like that and you're really whipping the olive oil, that's not a place for it. That's actually just going to be very bitter and have not a palatable taste. So, excuse me, I would say that you really want canola, some sort of neutral oil like canola, avocado, or grapeseed, and then a really good extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah, I think I remember that you said that you like avocado oil a lot for that.
I do. I love avocado oil. I really do. I'm a big fan. It actually has a higher burning temperature point than canola. It's less affordable, so I understand if that's an impediment for some people, but I do love it. I actually think avocado oil has the best mouthfeel, the best flavor. You have to find a brand that works. Not all of them are great, but a good brand of avocado oil is really, really wonderful.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat. It's been great, just a terrific experience. And the book is
My pleasure.
Peas, Love, and Carrots, the cookbook. The website is peasloveandcarrots.com. Instagram handle for Danielle is at Peas, Love, N, the letter N, Carrots. And the author, again, is Danielle Renov. And all I can say is it's been a joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Steve. It really was wonderful to be here. I'm honored to be on your show. And, you know, maybe one of these days you'll come to Israel and visit me on this side.
You know what's so funny about that is you are now the second person. I'm gonna let you in on a little personal story here. So you're now the second person in 2 weeks to give that message. And I have always wanted to come to Israel, but my wife has been reluctant to come to Israel. And
okay, well, maybe let her listen. And then she'll come.
Believe me, I'm going to let her listen because now it's the second message in 2 weeks. So in a post-COVID world, it's going to be, I hope it's going to be a destination we'll be able to enjoy.
Please, God, and we're looking forward to welcoming you with open arms.
That would be fantastic. Thank you again, Danielle.
Thank you so much, Steve. Have a wonderful day.
I'm going to, and you too. You've been listening to or watching Great Taste, wherever you happen to be, 60 minutes of delicious radio or 60 minutes of delicious viewing on Fairfield Media Center's YouTube channel. I'm Steve Boss, your host.
Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.